Thank you so much, Nita. We're going to open it up to your questions, and you can come around here, and we'll have you use the mic here so we can line up starting here. But I did want to mention that we had a woman from Afghanistan who wasn't able to come at the last minute, and want to acknowledge that while our country, as Anne said, continues to put so much of our resources, instead of putting it into healthcare and education and the green economy that we want to see for the future, is still putting it into war. And to have a peace president who is calling for a surge of troops in Afghanistan is not what we as women want. And to have a, quote, peace president who continues to have troops in Iraq and is questioning whether his initial promise of removing the troops by the end of 2010 can actually be done now is not what we as women want. And so in the name of the woman who couldn't join us in Afghanistan, I want to say that war is not the answer for liberating women around the world. And as women from Afghanistan to Iran to Pakistan to all over the world have said to us, please, please do not liberate us. Please let us build our own movements, support our movements, support civil society in our countries, but don't come in with your bombs to liberate us. So we're going to open up now, and please come start alongside here and ask your questions to any one of our wonderful panelists. And please say your name, and if you're with an organization, you might want to mention it.
Hi, my name is Maya Abdurrahman, and I'm with the American Palestinians Association, but I'm also with YMAP and Love Thy Neighbor, who are groups that work very hard to resolve the conflict in Palestine. I do not want to miss the opportunity to remind you of the pain and suffering of Palestinian mothers. Palestinian mothers who have lived under an occupation, Palestinian since 1967, Palestinian mothers who have been in refugee camps since 1948, Palestinian mothers who lose their children. And I'm going to share with you one story of a Palestinian mother who lost much and still hopes for a better Palestine. I know this is not a question, but I just did not want to miss this opportunity. And I think as you leave here, please remember this story. My grandmother lived in pre-1948 Palestine and owned land and property, and was forced in 1948 to move with her son and children to Qabat Jenin. Under the guise of night, they were peasants. They had no means of doing anything other than tilling the land. They lost it all. My father, in the darkness of the night, would go through checkpoints and Israeli points back to his own original land to steal grape shoots, because those are the only ones that you can actually put back. Not the olives, which are really important and only mature every 15 years, but you can't duplicate them, but the shoots of the grapes. Until today, they still call that piece of property, which is only 13 shoots of grapes, they call it El Morel, and that was their little farm where they came from originally. But more importantly, all of them have such pride in what they have. But today it's occupied, and my father has fought very hard to get back the land, but never will, because he is no longer living there. And what I'm trying to say is that life is really tough for Palestinians, and they continuously get up and move forward with the help of women. Let's support their efforts. They have the seeds of peace, and they have the seeds of reincarnation within their own children, and through their breath of life and learning lessons that they teach their kids. Please support their efforts and support Code Pink as they bring this issue to light. We're not talking about politics, we're talking about human beings and the humanity of the people. Thank you very much, and thank you, Alma, for helping shed some light on conflict resolution. Thank you.
for that remark. I just wanted to add to your story that when I traveled to Syria for the first time to learn more about where I came from, it was in July 2003. And Syria is home to 500,000 Palestinian refugees, something that I did not know. And there are Palestinian refugees all over in Jordan, and Egypt, all over the Middle East, and it speaks to the unresolved conflict. And when I went to this refugee camp, Jaramana it was called, I was so inspired by the resilience of these people. And this was at the time when the Bush administration was unveiling the roadmap to peace. And if you recall, one of the problems with the roadmap with Camp David II that President Clinton was trying to push between peace between Syria and Israel and the Israelis and the Palestinians. And another problem with the Annapolis summit in November 2007 was that it didn't mention the Palestinian right to return. And when I met with these Palestinian refugees, I remember I kept hearing, we're still waiting for a home of our own. And that struck me incredibly, that here I have the freedom of movement, something that I totally took for granted, something that is enshrined in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Here I was having the privilege to see where my dad went to school in Aleppo, to see where my mom used to live, see where she used to have her garden. Things that I took for granted, these people are still waiting for. And I just wanted to mention that. That's something about Syria in particular that I know is relevant, and that is it speaks to unresolved conflicts in the region, because it's not only home to Palestinian refugees, but also Iraqi refugees, and that's something to consider and to demand from this administration. As much as I think the peace movement finds itself struggling to grasp in terms of the messaging and how to hold this administration accountable without not necessarily relying on the tactics used during the Bush administration, we have to remember and we have to push this administration to hold the promise of peace, and particularly to end the war in Iraq. I mean, that was a mandate for change. And that happened because of us, and that's something that we still need to push for. So I just wanted to add that.